Hey guys, Ken Coulson here, coming at you with some more Q&A about my novel, The Arsonist, which is a corporate thriller being released by Koehler Books in March of 2024. So, two-part question today. The first was about what was the process of writing the book, and the second was about what makes it different. The process for me, I came at writing kind of through music. So I was writing songs, and ultimately we had an album called The Forever Smile with my band Gatsby's Greenlight that became this bigger story, if you will. And ultimately, like a lot of things really over the last decade for me, it was this fusion of music and sustainability, and it became this story about, reclaiming sometime in the future, after things break down, reclaiming our knowledge, our natural knowledge of how to work with the planet. And so I ended up writing, 3 novels in that young adult series, and really cutting my teeth on trying to figure out how to write, which, ultimately was an amazing, immersive experience. I completely got lost in this world, and I think there's a lot that's there that I hope to return to someday. Ultimately, the initial writings, I think, were, they were too dense, and they just weren't good enough to kind of take to market. But I did go back and ultimately write a prequel that I think is good, and based on all my knowledge from that early days of writing up until now. Ultimately, for me, that was kind of the learning period, and I had a lot of mentors along the way, many of which are named in The Arsonist, in terms of folks that kind of helped me learn, editors and guides and advisors, if you will. The Arsonist was a book that I knew I wanted to write. I had these experiences, and I wanted to write about Wall Street in a satirical way, because look, the reality is it's a funny place. It's a world of paradox. It's a world of excess. It can be a world of great beauty at times in terms of the good things that it ultimately does facilitate. But there's a yin and yang to that world that really, I think, makes it evergreen, to the folks that are within it. But also those from the outside that are just curious by these creatures that call themselves bankers and traders and whatnot. And I had my fair share of what I would call grandiose experiences that were worthy of a book. So my approach really was, to try to come up with some vehicle. And ultimately, I have to give credit to my wife, who came up with the idea of the interview process. I was very much Cal Minor in a lot of ways, as I kind of searched for direction after I left the trading world and had picked up the sustainability world, and doing a lot of interviewing all over the map, and things that were very specific to sustainability or going back to my roots. And ultimately, she had the idea of this kind of Slumdog Millionaire-esque interview with flashbacks that was a great way to tell the story of the journey of our character, Cal Minor, as he became aware that he had actually grown through this hardship, and it had changed him, and he didn't want the same things that he wanted, that he thought he wanted. So, my process was finding the vehicle and just writing that kind of middle of the book, and then trying to figure out, well, what does the reader need to know about who Cal was before, and ultimately where is he going at the end? And that was the original process of the book. And I think in earlier videos I explained that ultimately through my experiences in the sustainability side, the book, through the prodding of an editor, became this corporate thriller. And that was a really exciting moment, because I think it was waiting for something like that to make it, bigger and hopefully more approachable and a broader appeal. And once we kind of decided on that direction, there was so much happening in terms of corporate villainry in the sustainability world, that it was really kind of easy to take that and make it through an amalgam, kind of come up with a character like Hank Hunneman and Johnny Riker. And these characters just kind of took life of their own, and really, I think, drove a big part of the book forward. So my process was messy. Hopefully in the future in writing, I'm getting better at outlining, but ultimately I kind of wake up with something in my head and I have to write it. That's been the typical way that I do it, or I just start to see and feed more parts of the story. But I hope to get better, because I think there's a lot. I could reduce the number of edits, certainly, if I was a little bit cleaner. As to what makes The Arsonist different, I think it's not a traditional formulaic thriller. And I think that, is a pro and a con for us in terms of going to market, but ultimately it is what it is. And I think it's a full experience, and you really get the depth of character that you don't always get in something that's formulaic. I think all kind of parts of the plot, if you will, the story of coal miners' rise and fall, and the climate bubble popping in the background, and ultimately the thriller plot are compelling. But it's definitely not a traditional kind of formulaic thriller. And it does have a lot of satire and a lot of literary moments, which I hope kind of give the book a little bit more staying power and, dare I say, kind of a cult appeal, because of the depth that you're able to kind of go on a journey with each of these characters a little bit more than you might otherwise. So that's my take. I'd love to hear your take at kencoulson.com or on social media. As I said, The Arsonist will be released in December of this year for pre-sale, and ultimately everywhere books are sold on St. Paddy's Day 2024. So I hope you check it out. Thanks for stopping by. Take care.